LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation, the Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, tomorrow, French President Emmanuel Macron, along with the French Interior Minister Gérard Collomb, will visit Calais. Yes, Calais, back in the news. They'll visit Calais. They will see what migrants are there. We understand up to 1,000. When I say migrants, I mean people trying to get to the United Kingdom will be there. Of course, it's all a far cry from the jungle, which was closed down at the end of 2016, which had about 6,000 people in it, and the French authorities closed that down in no uncertain terms. But we've had now, year after year after year, the nightly attempt by illegal immigrants to get into the United Kingdom. Of course, it happens mostly with people breaking into lorries, but I myself was on the main road there, going into Eurotunnel a couple of years ago. There was a traffic jam, and there were all sorts of people around the car trying the doors and trying to get in. So it's been a horrible, dangerous, bad situation in Calais for a long, long time. And of course, it also links into the 2003 Le Touquet Agreement, whereby British authorities check passports in Calais, and French authorities, as happened to me this morning in Folkestone, check passports on our side. And this is an arrangement, nothing to do with the European Union, agreed between Britain and France, and supported heavily by the ferry companies, the train companies, etc. So Macron will go and visit with his Interior Minister. And then, on Thursday, he comes to the United Kingdom. He's going to be there for 3 or 4 days. He will meet the Prime Minister, and it's understood that he will urge the Prime Minister to allow more lone children, as well as adult migrants with family members in the UK, to cross the Channel to be housed in the United Kingdom. And of course, for many years we've talked about lone children, and we've accepted quite a lot of lone children, and I'm sure many of them were deserving cases. Trouble is, one of them, of course, tried to ignite a device that was a bomb on the tube in West London, and quite a lot of them who came across as children looked to me to be 33-year-olds that would have made quite good rugby prop forwards. So there are some pretty big issues around that too. The essence of it really is simply this. President Macron is expected to say to Theresa May on Thursday that he will give his approval to a favourable Brexit trade deal if Britain takes more migrants from Calais. Is that a deal that you, the LBC listener, would be willing to accept? And if you think we have to just give more and more concessions because getting the right trade deal is absolutely crucial, then call me on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think, hang on, this guy's blackmailing us, and it's time we stood up to behaviour like that, in which case you can text to 84850. And if you've got a message that you would like Mrs May to convey to President Macron on Thursday, then let me know what it is on Twitter using the hashtag Farage and LBC, tweet at LBC, and of course watch me on Facebook. We're live from Strasbourg in the European Parliament, where I'm guessing it could be an exciting next couple of days. But straight with this subject. Now, in response to Macron, Tim Loughton, who is a member of the Commons Home Affairs Committee, I think his feeling is the French are being really, frankly, pretty ungrateful, in the sense that we in the last 3 years have given £124 million worth of money to the French authorities to build, anyone's been through Calais lately will back me up, to build an extraordinary array of fences. They've cleared out all the trees. They've tried to make life much safer for car journeys, and in particular for the lorry drivers queuing up to get into that port at Calais. And Loughton makes the point that actually any attempt to dilute this Le Touquet treaty. And do you remember David Cameron in the referendum? If we leave the EU, the Le Touquet deal will be over. Hordes will be coming to Dover, giving us a massive problem. It's one of the big arguments that Cameron made. But Tim Loughton, Tory MP, makes the point that any attempt to dilute the Le Touquet agreement would in fact be the French cutting off their noses to spite their faces, given the massive disparity between EU trade goods headed north rather than those headed south. And France alone has a trade surplus every year with the United Kingdom of 12 billion sterling. Why on earth would they want to make this more difficult? Why on earth would they want the French border back as it stands in Calais and the British border back in Dover when actually we're paying for everything in Calais anyway? So, folks, is Macron a blackmailer, a bullier? Or is this yet another concession that we simply have to swallow in order to attempt to get a good trade deal? And about which, of course, I'm pretty sceptical. I met, as you know, this time last week, Mr. Barnier in Brussels, and sure, tariff-free on wine and cheese and cars and all the rest, chocolate and all the rest of it. But when it came to services and financial services, he took a pretty tough view. Today, of course, Chuka Ramuna and Anna Soubry have been to see Monsieur Barnier. And I wonder whether they've left thinking that a deal could be really difficult and really potentially made to look pretty horrible. And, of course, they perhaps would think that's a good thing, though quite how that serves the national interest is utterly and entirely beyond me. Martin is calling from New Cross. Martin, is it right of Macron to say, take our migrants from Calais or we won't support a good trade deal?
Well, first of all, good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
Yes, no, absolutely not. If I was in the government, I would actually tell him to get stuffed.
Would you really?
Absolutely.
What about, Martin, what about international diplomacy, Martin? I mean, surely you've got to be a bit more diplomatic than that. Or do you believe in the Donald Trump school of doing international diplomacy?
Oh, I'm with the Trump school of diplomacy. With these sort of people, you can't reason with them. Absolutely no way. But unfortunately, we've got a Prime Minister that's so weak because of all the Euro fanatics on her back benches, desperate for her to get some sort of deal, that she probably would cave into this.
Right, so, Martin, let me ask you, let me sort of search for the compassion in your heart. What about single children at Calais? Shouldn't we be generous to them?
Look, the problem with that, Nigel, is do you remember last year when those so-called unaccompanied children came over and they looked as if they were 40? I remember one of them looked like Old Man Steptoe. So if there's any unaccompanied children who are actually children, that's different. But unfortunately, it's not the case.
I was just trying to play devil's advocate, but it didn't really work. Martin, I agree with you. I think this has been absolutely abused wholesale. As I say, also, we have to be slightly careful because one of them did try and blow up a tube train in West London, and that is simply a fact. Right, Martin, your message is absolutely simple and loud and clear. Martin says, tell Macron to get stuffed. It won't quite happen like that, but you never know. The British Prime Minister may well stand up and say, look, you are taking the mickey. We are paying for all these border controls. You ought to, in many ways, actually be rather grateful that we're making it much easier for you to sell us all your wine and cheese. What does Phil in Enfield think? Good evening, Phil.
Good evening, Nigel. I would advocate entertaining it. I think it might be a sensible thing. I think Macron, charismatic as you are, is a realist. He would get himself off the hook too. If we took a limited number under surveillance and it won a trade deal, I would endorse it.
OK, Phil, here's the downside of that. And I do understand what you say. If it was 500 people or 1,000 people or whatever it was, and if we could at least be fairly sure that they weren't going to be a danger to our society, not easy, I know, but at least worth trying. But Phil, once the route is seen to be open, how many more would arrive in Calais?
Judging by the reaction of Germans to their own predicament here and the outcry against the problems they've had, I think we would have a sympathetic audience in Europe. And the gesture of accepting a number, and I say a number, and I certainly don't include 33-year-olds pretending to be 15, it would be worth it. Set a sprat to catch a mackerel. You're a trader. Do it.
Yeah, no, Phil, I understand it. If it was a limited number of people, it was a one-off deal, then, do you know what? I would, of course, in practical terms, be prepared to countenance it. I just fear I just fear that if the message goes, right now the message is getting to the UK is harder than it was a few years ago because of all the fences, security, and all the rest of it. If the message comes that actually the Brits have now become a really soft touch on this, mind you, we're still a soft touch because even when we find illegal immigrants in our country, their chances of going back anywhere are about 1 in 4, and those figures are absolutely true. My worry, Phil, is if you send the message, then because of Schengen, because of the free movement of peoples within Europe, anybody that comes in via Greece or Italy could very easily finish up at Calais.
I share your worry. I acknowledge the risk, but I think the risk is worth taking in these circumstances.
OK, Phil, fine, thank you. Phil, the pragmatist, thinks a trade deal is really important, thinks a few people, 1,000 people, whatever it may be, is a price worth paying. And on the face of it, Phil is right. I just still fear it would lead to more. James is calling from Manchester. Good evening, James.
Good evening, Nigel. Well, I hope Theresa May is listening. It's an emphatic no from me for several reasons. First of all, we're British and we don't admire being blackmailed. The second point I'd like to make, Nigel, is that here in the Northwest, I brought this on your programme before, we've got over 10,000 British children in the Northwest that are still in temporary foster care, that can't find permanent families, that have been passed around from school to school, house to house, you name it, year in, year out, that still can't find any permanent homes for people. We need to look after our own first. And I also don't support the unsponsored importation of unfettered terrorists into our country that have not got any background checks, got no history on them whatsoever. And as far as I can see, it's no deal or nothing. We will not be blackmailed.
Right. Well, James, I on the third point about terrorists, let's just be reasonable and say that the number of people, of all those that have come to Europe in the last few years, the numbers that have committed terrorist offences are very, very small in percentage terms. But hey, it doesn't take very many, does it, to disrupt society and change our perceptions. But James, your big point that we should not be blackmailed by this French president is one that I absolutely, wholly and totally endorse. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, here in Strasbourg, and it's now 7:15.
LBC and its sister stations from Global bring you a brand new event, the Global Awards, rewarding the very best from the world of music, news and entertainment. The Global Awards.
And the award for Best News Moment, Interview or Debate goes to...
One incredible night with performances from Andrea Bocelli and Sam Smith performing live. And you can have your say on who will win at the Global Awards. Voting is now open. To vote, download the Global Player app or go to lbc.co.uk. March the 1st, 2018. The Global Awards. It's coming.
Right now, you can get 50% off a new boiler from British Gas in our half-price sale. You'll also get a 5-year warranty and only pay full price for installation. But hurry, the sale ends Monday and the clock's ticking. Search British Gas half-price boiler sale. Ends Monday, 15th of January. Conditions apply.
Crikey, the boiler's gone again. Cold showers. Oh, I'll have to get someone round and tidy up and get better biscuits. I've only got malted milk. I can't have no shower. I've got Zumba on Wednesday. Relax. Relax. It's Trust a Trader. Bloomin' lovely tradespeople who do the job right. You pop in your postcode and find great tradespeople right on your doorstep. Oh, he's here. Get the party rings out. Visit trustatrader.com.
Trustatrader.com. Why, hello. It's me, Dracula. Relax, I don't bite much. Unlike the cost of some broadband deals, that's why I switched to Sky Broadband Unlimited. It's monstrously good value. Just £18 a month for 12 months, including line rental, plus a $9.95 setup fee. Exclusively for new and existing Sky TV customers. It's totally unlimited, and they'll never slow you down, even at peak times. Well, you don't want anything to stop the flow when you're screaming. Streaming, do you? Search Sky Broadband. Sky. Believe in better. Sky network areas and new broadband customers only. 12-month contract. Further terms apply.
The best place for sleepyheads is in their bridge bed in bed.
The
January sale at Bridge Bedding is now on. Beds and mattresses from the biggest, best-known brands in the UK and will beat any price on a like-for-like basis. Before you buy your next new bed, visit a Bridge Bedding Centre, Leigh-on-Sea, Hornchurch or online at bridgebedding.com and find out about our free delivery and next-day delivery options.
The best place for sleepyheads is in a Bridge Bedding bed.
Get in!
Oh, yes! The sound of people finishing their tax return. If you're self-employed, QuickBooks helps you keep track of the tax you owe, so you can file it faster. Snap and store receipts, automatically sort expenses, and claim back every mile you can with auto mileage tracking. All in one place. Take the stress out of tax time. Search QuickBooks today. Taxes done.
Woohoo! Special fares. We could go anywhere. How about Australia?
Too much coral.
Singapore?
Too warm.
How about Bangkok? The Songkran Water Festival is on.
I don't like swimming.
Well, luckily for you, it's a water pouring festival, like a giant water fight.
Bangkok it is.
There really is somewhere for everyone. Travel the world with special fares and make 2018 a year to remember. Book by the 31st of January for travel until the 30th of November 2018. Visit emirates.com/UK. Conditions apply. Fly Emirates. Hello tomorrow.
This is LBC, live from Strasbourg, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
President Macron goes to Calais tomorrow and comes to meet Theresa May in the United Kingdom on Thursday. He is expected to say that he will support talks in Brussels in March, which will then begin to talk about giving a positive, sensible trade deal to the United Kingdom, provided that we take a lot more migrants from Calais, in particular lone children or adults who have children with them. And Macron wants us to house many more of them. Well, you know, this immigration debate, it's happening everywhere across Europe, indeed across the whole of the Western world. And a really quite a surprising voice over the course of the weekend said something that I was really quite surprised and actually rather pleased by. Pope Francis. Now, I'm not a Roman Catholic, but back in 2014, he visited the European Parliament and I shook his hand and we had a nice little conversation. You can see a picture of that by going to @LBC on Twitter. And he came to the European Parliament where he was feted, lauded, and then gave this speech that was actually pretty Eurosceptic about what are you doing with all this taxpayers' money, with these wonderful buildings and your fleets of chauffeurs. So I've always had a bit of respect for him. Well, yesterday, whether you knew it or not, was World Day of Migrants and Refugees. Perhaps that's why Macron has timed this visit to Calais and the visit to Britain as he has. And Pope Francis said, talking about communities being concerned about mass immigration, he said, and I quote, "These fears are legitimate, based on doubts that are fully comprehensible from a human point of view. Having doubts and fears is not a sin," said the Pope. Now, he did go on to say that must not lead to hostility and rejection. But isn't it remarkable to hear the head of the Roman Catholic Church saying people are fully entitled to be concerned about the pace of immigration into Europe from other parts of the world? Not the sort of thing we would get from our Archbishop of Canterbury, who seems to regard me as being something of the devil. Hey, the feeling there is mutual. So, do we think that what Macron is putting to us is a deal that's worth accepting? 0345 6060 973 is the number. I'm going to go next to Andy in Cardiff. Good evening, Andy.
Good evening, Mr. F. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. I just sort of can't almost believe that the French president thinks he can effectively come and blackmail us. And everyone says to me, Andy, the Prime Minister's weak. Surely on this one she'll stand up and be strong, won't she?
I have two very brief points, if you'll allow me the 2 points. The first point is that this is clearly blackmail. What happened over the last 18 months of the French, the Germans and some of the core European countries actually making other countries accept migrants and say they've arrived there, you've got to put them up, you've got to make them citizens. What happened to the French? If they want to have no migrants in Calais, they should make them all citizens. It's the first safe port of entry.
Yes, I mean, that's the traditional definition, of course, isn't it, of somebody who's a refugee, is they claim refugee status, and this is under the 1951, Geneva Convention on this. They claim refugee status in the first safe country they get to. The point is, Andy, and actually the Interior Minister, Gerard Collomb, says that these people don't go to asylum centres in France because it's Britain they want to get to.
But that's not the point. The convention's there for a reason, and it's to stop people transversing different countries to get to another country, or a country of choice. Just very quickly, my second point, Nigel, if you'll allow me. You had a conversation with Mr. Adonis yesterday, Lord Adonis.
Absolutely. It was wall to wall, Andy. Yesterday morning from 10 till 12, we had an hour of Alistair Campbell and half an hour of Lord Adonis, just to remind those that weren't listening in.
Well, I actually agreed with everything he said, apart from one thing. I think, and I'm going to upset you a little bit here, I think we should have a second referendum based on the deal offered. But unlike all the rhetoric around you didn't know what you were voting for, or people didn't know and weren't aware of the ramifications of what they were voting for, the vote should be to accept the deal Theresa May comes back with. That's number one. Number two on the ballot paper should be to stay in the EU. And number three should clearly say to leave the EU, the single market and the customs union with a no deal and go to WTO rules. Then the EU cannot use it as a blackmail tool against the public.
Andy, do you really think we can offer people a referendum with three different potential answers? It means that no referendum is going to get 50%. Surely that can't be good. It'll lead to resentment and calls for yet more referendums.
But it will lead to a decent deal from the EU, and to contemplate either a deal that's a bad deal or stay in the EU would promote a bad deal.
Well, Andy, I tell you what, I'm going to cut that off there, because we will be debating this over the course of the next few months. On the 22nd of March is when the trade talks will start. Theresa May will be in Brussels. Why on earth it's taking all this long to begin, I don't know, although I get the feeling they may be stringing us along. But Andy, your big point about this is blackmail, I do totally agree with. The last leader I remember blackmailing us was a fella called Gaddafi. And Gaddafi said, if you remove me as leader of Libya, you will be flooded with migrants. And of course our genius Prime Minister, David Cameron, along with the French President and with sort of tacit support from President Obama, didn't listen to that. They went full steam ahead, of course, and bombed and blasted and killed Gaddafi. And what has happened? Where has the main migrant route been through to Europe since 2015? Well, surprise, surprise, it's come through Libya. And haven't we done well? There are now open slave markets in modern-day Libya. Haven't we done well? Gloria says, we cannot house our own, let alone any more from Calais. Why should we? Alistair helpfully says, Farage is the cause of this Brexit stuff. He created it with the lies. Well, I think the lie was Cameron's, actually, when he said if we left the European Union, the Le agreement would fall and we'd be flooded with migrants from Calais. Clearly, this is our choice. It's up to the Prime Minister whether she accepts what is being put to her by President Macron. I would just like, somewhere in this narrative, for the French to say, thank you ever so much for 124 million that you've spent in the last few years making Calais a better and safer place. Lynn picks up on that and says, we've already paid millions to help Calais with the migrant situation. If France doesn't want them, don't let them in. Well, the problem, Lynn, in fact, she points it out, they should withdraw from Schengen and strengthen their borders, not giving in to blackmail. Well, that's the point, isn't it? Because of Schengen, you can come into Greece, come into Italy, go straight into France and get to Calais. And Andy was talking about Lord Adonis yesterday, and I mentioned Alistair Campbell. And if you missed that, and there's some really good stuff there, go to lbc.co.uk and watch me going head-to-head with two of the great Remainers of the day. Dan from Nottingham is a new caller to the show. Dan, should we accept the premise that is being put to us by Emmanuel Macron that we have to take migrants in order for him to be nice to us on a trade deal?
First of all, good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
Frankly, no. We shouldn't be. We shouldn't allow Emmanuel Macron to blackmail us over the migrants in Calais. no matter what the trade deal is that we are being offered from Emmanuel Macron, we should not allow ourselves to be blackmailed. We should just snub the deal, whatever the deal may be, straight away. There are plenty of other countries that we can try and get a trade agreement with once we come out of the European Union. We don't even know, as it's already been pointed out, we don't even know these migrants that are claiming to be that claim to be children. We don't know if they are children. I mean, as you've said earlier, one that came through that claimed to be a child very nearly set off a bomb in London. We don't know.
And that is now subject, Dan, to a sort of major court case at some point. But yes, you're absolutely right. And one of the things, of course, that happens with so many people coming from Calais attempting to get into Britain is they nearly all of them have lost their passports. So proof of age, proof of where they come from is a real problem.
Yes, absolutely. And as I say, it's about as... Okay, it's all well and good as saying we can try and survey the issue, monitor it closely in terms of who's coming in from Calais. But as you've just said, a lot of them have lost their passports. And not only that, but if you've got...
When I say lost, Dan, when I say lost, that was in inverted commas.
Oh, no, of course, yeah. But what I'm saying is, it's very difficult to... It would be difficult to closely monitor all of this.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and France can't monitor it. France is completely open. But no, Dan, your basic message is don't give in to blackmail, yeah?
Exactly. But the problem is, Nigel, I fear that Theresa May will give in to...
Well, you may be right.
We've already seen it with the divorce bill.
On the money, the European Court of Justice. She's been very weak up until now. Maybe now she'll get tough. Dan, I thank you. Agnes says to me on Twitter, of course Macron is blackmailing the UK, and it's all your fault, what it often is, along with the other Brexiteers, for putting the UK in such a weak position. Agnes, we are in a very strong position. We have done a hell of a lot to help the French with a huge problem in Calais. We paid 124 million over the course of the last few years to make it safer and to make their trade easier, and they sell us £12 billion of the goods more every year than we sell them. What more could he possibly ask from us? You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively at LBC, live from Strasbourg at 7:30, and time for the news with Thomas Watts.
The government's insisting the taxpayer will not bail out Carillion, as ministers say employees will continue to be paid for providing public services. It's feared the firm's collapse could affect contracts including meals, cleaning and maintenance at hundreds of schools. A second inquest into the death of toddler Poppy Worthington in 2012 has ruled she was sexually assaulted before she died. The 13-month-old's father, who denies involvement in her death, refused to answer questions 252 times during the hearing. England cricketer Ben Stokes has been charged with a fray following a fight outside a nightclub last September. The 26-year-old will appear before magistrates in Bristol. LBC weather, cold and windy tonight with clear spells and blustery showers. Some snow on higher ground in northern and central parts, a low of 1 Celsius.
LBC Travel and the M25, it's down to just 2 lanes anti-clockwise. That's at junction 12 for the M3 following an accident, and it's causing queues of 40 minutes from junction 14 for Heathrow. In Holborn, Kingsway, it's closed southbound around Holborn Station. It's because of an accident there. And in Highbury, the A1, slow-moving northbound. It's because of a breakdown at Highbury Corner. And onto the tubes on the Piccadilly line, there are severe delays, and that's because of a faulty train earlier at Manor House. LBC Travel, I'm Anne-Marie Walsh.
This is LBC.
Right now, with Air Canada, you can save on flights from London to Montreal, Buenos Aires, Toronto, New York, Quebec, Punta Cana, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Mexico, Boston, Washington, San Francisco, Edmonton, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Vancouver, Kyoto, Montego Bay, Phoenix, Halifax, Miami, Chicago, Las Vegas, Nashville, Memphis, Varadero, Honolulu, Portland, Cozumel, Ottawa, Fort Lauderdale, Havana, Saskatoon, Austin, Moncton, Cleveland, New Orleans, Seattle, Orlando, Calgary, and so many more. The world is big, and so is our sale. Save now until January 18th for travel and select dates. Visit aircanada.com or call your travel agent.
Crikey, the boiler's gone again. Cold showers. Oh, I'll have to get someone round and tidy up and get better biscuits. I've only got malted milk. I can't have no shower. I've got Zumba on Wednesday. Relax. It's Trust a Trader. Bloomin' lovely tradespeople who do the job right. You pop in your postcode and find great tradespeople right on your doorstep. Oh, he's here! Get the party rings out. Visit trustatrader.com.
Trustatrader.com. Right now, you can get 50% off a new boiler from British Gas in our half-price sale. You'll also get a 5-year warranty and only pay full price for installation. But hurry, the sale ends Monday and the clock's ticking. Search British Gas half-price boiler sale. Ends Monday, 15th of January. Conditions apply.
The John Lewis clearance is now on. There are thousands of great offers across all your favourite brands, from kitchen and homeware to fashion and beauty, as well as expert advice from John Lewis partners and a minimum 2-year guarantee on all our electricals. Visit John Lewis or shop online and get more of what you love for less. John Lewis clearance ends Sunday.
Too cold to go outside? Now you don't have to thanks to the Vodafone Big Winter Sale. Enjoy non-stop streaming, sharing and surfing with the UK's lowest priced unlimited fibre broadband plus home phone. For only £20 a month for 18 months for existing mobile customers plus £9.95 delivery. Just one of the amazing offers in the Vodafone Big Winter Sale. Go in store or online today. The future is exciting. Ready? The Vodafone.
18-month agreement, subject to credit check and availability. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband. Ends 28th of Feb.
Just how amazing is the Virgin Atlantic sale? As amazing as going on a blind date with a doctor. A hot doctor from Sweden, who was an astronaut before he was a hot doctor. In his spare time, he runs a rescue centre for puppies. Blind puppies. Yeah, the Virgin Atlantic sale is that kind of amazing. Visit virginatlantic.com to book.
TDC Smile in a Day offers a permanent solution to the embarrassment and discomfort of dentures or loose and missing teeth.
You can't put a price on it. I know that sounds cliched, but I cannot put a price on the transformation in me that was triggered by having my teeth done.
Book your free consultation today. Visit smileinaday.co.uk or call TDC Harley Street on 0203 7334 986.
The word would be transformative.
The Nigel Farage Show, live from Strasbourg, only on LBC.
Well, it's very nice of the French President Emmanuel Macron to say that he'll be a constructive voice in March when the talks start about the trade deal for the United Kingdom, provided that we take more migrants from Calais, particularly lone children and adults with children, and we house them in the United Kingdom. And I'm asking you, is that acceptable to you? But before I get to that again, Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, is the latest Brexiteer to admit he fears the result of the European Union referendum could be reversed. Now remember, I said this last week and you all thought I'd gone nuts. You all thought I'd been smoking something funny when I said I did think we faced the prospect that we might need to have a second referendum. Not because I wanted it, we shouldn't even be discussing it, but because I fear what's going on. And Boris, very much on the same lines, tells friends he's worried the establishment will increase their efforts throughout 2018. The city, by which he means Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, and high-level figures in Whitehall are among those who Johnson is most worried about. He told friends Brexit far from sealed and that Leavers still face a huge fight. So Boris and I finding ourselves on exactly the same page on that, and in many ways not for the first time. Kevin on Twitter says, why not just ask if immigration was why people voted to leave? I don't know anyone who had a different reason. Why would we want more? Well, Kevin, there were many reasons why people voted Brexit, but I absolutely agree with you. Immigration was the absolutely key issue. It was the subset of getting back control of our country, taking our country back, but it was the clearest example of what a self-governing nation can do. Interestingly, the Home Affairs Committee today has reported, and they've urged the government to drop the target of reducing net migration to tens of thousands. Remember this? Call Me Dave. Cameron introduced it in 2010 in the manifesto. He said we'll reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year. He then said it again in 2015, and quite extraordinarily, Theresa May also said it in 2017. Net migration is currently running at 230,000. It's been as high as 335,000. And the Home Affairs Committee say drop it because it's breaking down public trust. Well, yes, saying it and not doing it is breaking down public trust, but I think what Kevin is pointing out here is that actually one of the key demands absolutely number one demand of Leavers is that the government gets a grip on this. And the one thing I saw last week with Monsieur Barnier is, frankly, we haven't even discussed it yet. So, is taking child migrants, adults with children, a price worth paying in order to Macron to give us, or at least campaign and argue, for us to have a good trade deal? Angela is calling from Brighton and a new caller to the show. Good evening, Angela.
Hello, Mr. Farage. I'm not at all happy because I thought they were trade deal talks.
Yes.
Well, the fact that he seems to have introduced people coming here, even though they want to come here and they're right over the, in Calais, I just feel rather sick. It makes me, I think it's disgusting. Probably, I don't know if I'm thinking of colour here, because I think most of the people are of a delicious cafe au lait colour, sort of, and I think it's disgusting using people as part of a trade deal.
Well, it's a bargaining chip, isn't it? He's using this as a bar. The truth is, Angela, the truth is that the French do not want camps of people, be they large or small, in Calais or Dunkirk or anywhere else. They see it as a huge problem. And to use another rugby analogy, I've often said over the last few years, it's rather like wing three quarters, pass that ball down the line. So they would love to shove the problem onto Britain. But I think your basic point, that what on earth is the French president doing when we're supposed to have passed phase one? And phase one, Angela, was the Prime Minister agreeing to pay a big bill to allow the European Court of Justice to have continued jurisdiction for a few years, and this concept perhaps of regulatory alignment. So we've given all this in phase one to move to phase two, which is supposed to be about trade, and now he wants to bring something else in.
I wouldn't mind him using it as a bargaining chip, but not for trade deal talk. That's what's getting my goat.
No, it's
Sorry,
a very...
I've got a complaint about you, Nigel.
Yeah. You have complained about me.
Yeah, can you move your show so I can listen to the Archers?
Quite a few people have said that. But of course, Angela, the great thing these days, of course, is that you can catch up on shows, on podcasts, and you can go to lbc.co.uk and catch up on all of this. And I don't know. Well, because the Archers do an omnibus, don't they? The Archers do an omnibus, and you can reach it online. So I'm sorry about that. Angela, great point you've raised. So if you were Theresa May, you were the Prime Minister, and Macron walks through the front door on Thursday, you'd lay it on the line to him, would you?
I'm afraid it would be unprintable and unsaleable, what I'm saying.
Very
Thank you
good.
so much.
No, great call, and thanks for calling. First-time caller, Angela, there from Brighton. That was great. Richard is calling me from Bristol, another new caller to the show. Richard, imagine you were Theresa May on Thursday. How would you deal with this proposition from President Macron?
Okay, Nigel, I'm going to throw a completely different twist on this, because I was trying to ring you on Sunday. What I was going to ask you, once we leave the EU, basically we've put all our baskets in, all our eggs in one baskets with the US. Now we
No.
Just hear me out on this in a minute. But most of it, we want to do a trade deal with America. What I was going to ask you, if Trump said to us, in order to get a good trade deal, we needed to take some refugees from the African nations, what would we do? What would Theresa May do? And it's quite ironic now you've asked us about Macron, because that doesn't surprise me. It's only surprised me that it hasn't come now.
Well, Richard, point number one, whilst America is a very important country, and after all, we do speak the same language, and, you haven't got translation costs and all the rest of it, and legal systems, well, they're different, but they're not that different. So there are lots, and of course, massive cross-investments, us in America, America with us. Is America an important part of our future? You bet your life it is, and particularly one that under President Trump is growing at such a phenomenal rate. But none of us, not one of us, ever argued that we were exchanging a trade deal with the European Union, and by the way, not a free trade deal, one that cost us a net 10 billion quid every year. Nobody ever argued it was so we could just be with America. The argument was there is a much bigger world out there, including, on top of America, of course, the Commonwealth, which has within it 2.3 billion people.
So if Trump put that on the table, then we would walk away.
We would walk away. Absolutely. Do you know something? Do you know something, Richard? All over the world, free trade agreements are never conditional on the free movement of people. It's just the European Union that's invented that.
But Nigel, I think you have to look at this world. This world has changed so much, and so many things have happened that we thought would never happen, that I would never write this off or take it off the table.
All right, but would you also accept, Richard, and you're right, the world's always changing, and it has changed a lot, but would you also accept, Richard, that voters want us to have a lot more control over the numbers of people and the types of people coming into our country?
Totally agree with you, and that's not a problem at all. I'm just saying that once we are actually out of the EU, we are looking to trade, yes, with different countries, I know. But why I say America is because they are our closest allies. Trump does like scoring points, and if he put that on the table, he would also be scoring points in America amongst his voters, and also he's putting our backs against the wall. And it would be interesting to see what May did do.
It's possible. I think he'd say no. The one country that would ask for it, by the way, just absolutely even-handed, India. India would say that a trade deal would need more free movement of people. But again, I think politically that would be impossible in this country because I think we've made our minds up. Robert, I thank you for your call, and making that point. Bonnie says, I don't mind immigration if they use a points-based system. Well, I've heard that before. Have a house to go to and a job and health insurance. Well, Bonnie, that really is very much like the work permit scheme, the limited immigration scheme that most countries in the world operate. It is not, Bonnie, an extreme thing to suggest. And I was suggesting this on British television in 2013 and 14 and being condemned for being an extremist for daring to say we should be like other normal countries. Darren says Macron is wanting to dump more on us because the likes of Poland and Hungary are refusing to take their quotas and there's nowhere else to put them. Darren, some truth in that. Central and Eastern Europe are literally sticking two fingers up to the European Union, the French and the Germans. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC, live from Strasbourg, and it's 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
After elections to Labour's national executive, Jeremy Corbyn has increased his power over the party. So does this make Labour more or less likely to win an election?
Clive Bull on LBC.
Landlords, Direct Line guarantees to beat other insurers' renewal premiums for the same cover. Can your insurance do that? Switch to Direct Line Landlord. New customers only. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
The John Lewis clearance is now on. There are thousands of great offers across all your favourite brands, from kitchen and homeware to fashion and beauty, as well as expert advice from John Lewis partners and a minimum 2-year guarantee on all our electricals. Visit John Lewis or shop online and get more of what you love for less. John Lewis clearance ends Sunday.
You could make the main dealer's day by paying over the odds. Or you could go to Big Motoring World and save a fortune on up to 2,000 pre-owned BMWs, Mercedes, Audis and VWs in stock. Then with the money you saved, put a smile on your face with a cheeky weekend away for two. Give yourself a break at Big Motoring World, just minutes from the M25. See bigmotoringworld.co.uk.
It's time. Time to join the millions of people that meet happy with Zoom video conferencing. With stunning HD video, crisp audio, and instant wireless sharing across any mobile, tablet, or desktop device. But the best thing about Zoom? It just works. So ditch the distractions, join the movement, and meet happy with Zoom video conferencing. Visit zoom.us to set up your free account today. That's zoom.us. Zoom video conferencing.
You've worked hard, your company has flourished, and you're deservedly reaping the fruits of your labour. However, you're now ready to retire and call it a day. But how do you ensure an orderly exit to realise maximum value from your business? At Barnes Rofe, our specialists have been busy helping clients with bespoke succession planning and business exit strategies. Call us today to help plan for your retirement. Barnes Rofe. Clever accountants for mature businesses.
Why, hello. It's me, Dracula. Relax, I don't bite much. Unlike the cost of some broadband deals, that's why I switched to Sky Broadband Unlimited. It's monstrously good value. Just £18 a month for 12 months, including line rental, plus a $9.95 setup fee. Exclusively for new and existing Sky TV customers. It's totally unlimited, and they'll never slow you down, even at peak times. Well, you don't want anything to stop the flow when you're screaming. Streaming, do you? Search Sky Broadband. Sky. Believe in better. Sky network areas and new broadband customers only. 12-month contract. Further terms apply.
The Advertising Standards Authority regulates ads across all media. Most are legal, decent, honest and truthful.
Consume, spend, buy!
Please. Last year, the ASA removed thousands that weren't.
Best of the best, greatest ever!
Come on, you're being offensive. Where there is advertising, the ASA is watching.
What? Everywhere?
Yeah, everywhere. Even this one.
Oh.
If an ad is wrong, the ASA is here to put it right.
The Nigel Farage Show, live from Strasbourg, only on LBC.
Well, President Macron is going to Calais tomorrow, and then he's coming to the United Kingdom to speak to Theresa May, to tell Theresa May we expect that, provided we're prepared to take lone child migrants in Calais, and indeed adults with children, and house them in the United Kingdom. If we do all of that, then he will look favourably upon a trade deal with the United Kingdom. Is that acceptable? And some of you think, well, actually, do you know what? If it's part of a deal's a deal, and that's okay. And my worry with that, of course, is that if you do that, you send a message and thousands more people will end up in Calais, and it won't solve anything. Others think it's outright blackmail. Some even think we should tell him to get stuffed. And I'm not sure I can quite agree with that. I wonder what Luke in Coventry, a new caller of the show, thinks. Luke, good evening.
Hi there. Good evening, Nigel. I was just wondering about the premise of us accepting more people into our country. Why is it, even if they are refugees in Calais, why is it a bad thing? If we give them a status in which they would be able to apply for a job or whatnot, they will be working. I read a statistic that only a third of the refugees who we've accepted so far, and that's a small amount, even knew about our benefit system, and possibly the whole idea of, we're full, only comes from the inefficiency of our services caused by the Conservatives. Just wanted to know your view on...
Well, Luke, the point about that is that given that we've had absolutely no control over immigration for the last few years, it's been very difficult to provide public services because, if you can't actually estimate what the population is going to be in 5 years, how do you know how many primary schools to build? So that's really been the sort of absolutely at the root of the problem. Remembering, and you blame the Conservatives, Mr. Blair thought letting in 8, then 10 former communist countries would lead to an increase of 13,000 a year. And of course, it was many multiples of that. But Luke, let me just put this point to you, that you may be very relaxed about numbers of people coming into the United Kingdom from outside, but do you accept, Luke, that actually there is a changed political imperative in the United Kingdom, and that people are now saying we've really got to get a grip and get control?
Yeah, I understand that there's fear, and I'm not saying the fear is unacceptable. In fact, I think it is acceptable to have a fear, absolutely, but I'm just questioning whether the fear is because, whether it be Blair, whether it be Theresa May, whether it be David Cameron, our services have been squeezed recently. We have gone under a policy of austerity, and that might be the primary cause of us, not being able to
Luke,
cope,
actually,
but not the immigration.
Everyone talks about austerity in the health service. We spend more and more money every single year on the health service. The real problem, Luke, I would put to you, is that the problem with our public services isn't money, it is we have a population crisis. That the British population is rising by nearly 500,000 people a year, and 75% of that rise is due to immigration directly or indirectly. So look, honestly, if Macron says, right, take 1,000 people, I will then absolutely argue for a rounded, sensible, grown-up trade deal that includes services, financial services and goods. That may well, Luke, of itself be a price worth paying. But don't you agree with me that if we said yes to the 1,000 currently in Calais, that in a month's time there'd be 1,000 more there?
Yeah, but then again, it's maybe just a difference, but I kind of have a belief of Esther Bozer up there. If we accept more, and if the productivity of them is good, and if the efficiency of the government dealing with our services is good, we'll be able to cope.
Well, I tell you what, Luke, you're going to have to find tens of billions more from somewhere, because the likelihood is, you know, that if you bring in a lot of people through Calais, they will not in the short term be able to pay their way, will they? Because there'll be children, etc. So it actually is an increased burden. It is an increased burden on our services. I don't want us to be totally cold-hearted. I do think, you know, we've always through history recognised our genuine, desire to help refugees. But I'm afraid so much, Luke, of what's happening is part of international trafficking and people coming from countries where they wouldn't even qualify for refugee status. But Luke, you make some excellent points, so thank you. Ben says, remind me of the time, Nigel, you were forced because of war, famine, genocide, ethnic cleansing, etc., to be in a position where you considered leaving your entire life behind you, perhaps with family members. Look, you know, until you know that level of humanity, I suggest you stop talking about it. Ben, how can we not talk about it when it's such a major issue in our country? Our last caller, Luke, who wants us to be sympathetic, and we all to a degree want to be sympathetic, but we've reached a point with public services, with the population crisis we've got going on, where we frankly have to get a grip and get back a degree of control. And if we encourage people in Calais, by letting them into the United Kingdom, we encourage the illegal movement of people there, we encourage the trafficking chain, and you know what? More people will drown in the Mediterranean directly as a result of it. Brian is calling from Cambridge. Good evening, Brian.
Yes, good evening, Nigel. How are you? Well done.
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. Right. What I wanted to say was that the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is getting out of the EU. Right, but even more important is staying out of the EU. And my personal feeling is that after we've left, there will obviously be another referendum because some political party is going to come in and have one. And it's most important that we don't go back in. Now, all this vindictiveness, nastiness, things that the EU are doing to us is going to make that less likely that we'll ever go back in. So as much as it annoys me, really annoys me, and I get very upset when I hear them threatening us and giving us a bad deal. It makes me realise that we're definitely never going to go back in, because most people in the UK do not like that sort of threatening and blackmailing and things like that, and they will never forgive them.
So we should be very grateful in many ways. Leavers like you and I, Brian, should be very grateful to Macron for making these unreasonable demands.
Because I think that this is what people will remember. They will remember not the friendliness, but they will remember the nastiness and the vindictiveness. And they will they will turn around and say, look how nasty and horrible they treated us.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, and I think all through this process they behave rather like that. Brian, if you were Theresa May on Thursday, what would you say to President Macron?
What would I say? I would say you've got more to lose than we have. Let's have a good deal. Let's have a free trade agreement. Let's have a deal that benefits everybody. I mean, at the end of the day, you see, the problem I think is that it's not Macron that is actually doing the negotiating. It is the unelected people in the European Union, and they actually don't stand to suffer as a result. Now, Macron is a politician; he needs votes, so he's much more likely to be amenable, same way as Frau Merkel. And
Macron will have a voice. Macron will have a voice, Brian. When it gets to that big summit in March, Macron will have a voice, but the person directing the traffic actually is Michel Barnier. You're quite right. Brian, I thank you for the point, and I do think, actually, that people have become a lot more sceptical about the European Union because of the way they've behaved. And Brian may be right. This could well be another issue where people say, goodness me, they really have got a cheek this lot, haven't they? James says to me on Twitter, if France doesn't wish to protect its borders, we shouldn't have to pay for their incompetence. Well, all I can say, James, to that is very well said. And of course, they can't protect their borders because they're part of Schengen, which means the free movement of people. There are some who would suggest that it's even meant that guns, weapons, bad people can cross borders just as easily now, I'm afraid, as good people. Sebastian is calling from Harrow. Good evening, Sebastian.
Good evening, Nigel. I just wanted to say that I thought these negotiations were supposed to be held in private, and they're supposed to come through the one body of the EU rather than be discussed openly for the whole world to discuss and pick apart and provide arguments for or
well,
so I think they should be private.
Very interesting, because Barnier has said all through this process, we as the European Union will speak with a single voice. All right, and you're quite right.
Why
you're quite right.
Acting on their own for this instance, they shouldn't be. They should be going through the right channels.
Well, I wonder. I don't think France are acting on their own. I think France are acting, actually, as an outlier for Barnier and Juncker and the gang. You know, the whole game, Sebastian, as I see it, and I've seen it since last Monday, is to make things look as impossible for the Brits, to force them into saying, we throw our hands up in the air, Brexit's too difficult, let's have another referendum. That's what I fear. Sebastian, I thank you. I thank all of you, particularly Angela from Brighton, who was caller of the day. She got it absolutely spot on. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC, live from Strasbourg. I'm back tomorrow night, here from 7, coming up at 10. Tonight, it's Ian Collins, but up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you. At 9, it's the Business Hour. Advice if you're starting up a business. Also later on, Cabinet Ministers have been